Bonjour everyone, I am Anne-Lise Cailliez and welcome to Parlez-vous CEO, where we teach the corporate talk and get real about entrepreneurship. Each week, I chat with founders and CEOs who build businesses their way, through the failures, pivots, and breakthroughs. And they bring the fire. Plus, I'll drop some golden nuggets of wisdom from my own entrepreneurial journey. This is your space to grow, learn, and evolve with a true growth mindset. Remember, success isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Now let's kick things off and get this party started. Hello, bonjour, hello. Welcome to another episode of Parlez-vous CEO. My name is Anne-Lise Cailliez and I am your host. Today, I am super excited to have with me Lisa Flicker, who is an accomplished executive search professional and the head of real estate at Jackson Lucas. We're based in New York, and she has 25 years of experience. Lisa is also a podcast host herself and serves on multiple advisory boards. Lisa, I'm so happy to have you here with me today. Would you introduce yourself to our audience and tell a little bit about your story and background?
Sure, I would love to. Well, first of all, Anne-Lise, thank you so much for having me on. It's so much fun to be on the other side of the podcast as the guest and not the host. A lot less pressure. I think you did a really great job of kind of giving the facts about my background. What's interesting now is that I feel like I started out as a CPA. I moved into executive search. I've been focused on the real estate space for 25 plus years now. And now I'm getting to the point in my career where I'm trying to think about what is my legacy? Like how do I want to take the next 10, 15 years of my career and make them special? And what's interesting about having kind of built a career around like always trying to just like be safe and make money, when you get to the point where you're like, okay, what do I really enjoy about my job and what do I like to do? And it's a little bit scary to let go of the reins of like, I'm just doing this to like earn a living versus I'm doing this because you know what, there's so many facets of what I do that I'm just super passionate about. So obviously the executive search that I do, I love, but also in working with so many executives, I feel like it's given me kind of a front row seat to what makes somebody successful. And I've really enjoyed being able to help people who might seem like, whether they're students or they're women going back into the industry, people who might seem like they're not kind of that like, oh, I have this exact background and I did every step right, but maybe I took 10 years off and how do I kind of go into my career? And so now I'm kind of calibrating around like, how do I take all of the skills I've received over the last 25, 30 years and really use that to do something that will hopefully be my legacy.
I love all these topics. I love discussing the big why. I love discussing women reentering the workforce. And one that I've been really thinking about lately as well, that's why it's really resonating for me, is my why. So Lisa, I want to understand, you've been in the space for 25 years and you have your own podcast. And what really drew you to help others find their calling rather than just focusing on your own career path?
It's a good question. I think what happened with me was I grew up in a very chaotic environment. I grew up like poverty level, like, and so for me, it was always like, how am I going to figure out how to have a career and be this kind of like dream person that I always wanted to be? And so what drew me was, and especially at the time that I was growing up, the internet didn't exist. So it wasn't easy to find out information. When I was going through high school, I remember saying to the advisor in my high school, I just want to do something that I'm going to get a job. Like, what could I do where I can work in an office and have a job? And they recommended that I go into accounting because I was good at math. And after about 5-7 years in public accounting, I got my master's in tax. I was like, oh, I kind of hate this. And it was a strange thing because to me, the goal was always like safety, make enough money so that you could have the things that you want to have. And then as I kind of got into my career, I realized, you know what, there are a lot of ways to calibrate around this. And it doesn't have to be that there's one career path. And I feel like I wish that I had a Lisa Flicker in my life who could come to me and say, Lisa, who's 16 years old, like, you probably shouldn't be a CPA. Like, you would be much happier if you did this, this, or this. But that didn't exist. And then the other half of it is I find that there are so many people who have like incredible potential, but they're just not connected to the business world. And it really, like, I don't know, I feel like I have this visceral reaction to students who are working so hard but might not have contacts in the business world, and so they just don't get the same information, they don't get the same opportunities. So for me, it's really been what drew me into this career is the ability to help people to figure out how to take their own personalities and who they are and create a career around that.
Mm-hmm. And Lisa, you also sit on boards, from real estate boards to diabetes research while running Jason Lucas real estate practice. And so, how do you think these different perspectives outside of your day job inform the way you approach leadership conversations?
It's very interesting. I have an executive coach of my own, and she and I were on the phone just before this. And I was saying to her, sometimes I feel like I go to all these conferences, and maybe some of the stuff that I do is just like I gravitate towards the things that I want to do. So I might be meeting with a college student at one of these conferences as opposed to, and then like not have time to meet with one of the CEOs who asks to meet with me. And I need to be better and more organized and have a tighter business plan. And she was great because she looked back at me and she said, Lisa, what if that is the key to your success? What if your success is based on you following what makes you happy? And yes, maybe you didn't meet with that CEO and he has 5 searches and he gave that to another company, but the kind of the perspective that you get from being in the market and talking to everyone, whether they're a student or a mom that's going back to work or a professional that's been in the business for 30 years, what if that's what shapes you and makes you a little bit different? And it made me stop and think about, like, what the negative that I keep, like, every day I'm like, I need a tighter business plan and I need to be more organized with my day. And then I'm like, what? Maybe if doing it in my own way is what led me to be successful, maybe that's what I should kind of grasp onto as leadership and not think like there's a right way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I completely hear you. I think at some point in my career, I had a bit of an aha moment. I had been working in real estate for maybe 15, 17 years. And you wake up one day, 15 years have gone by, because I was very much in the safety mode, making sure I'm doing the right things. Then you wake up and you start thinking, but wait, like, who am I helping? Why am I doing this? Did I even want to do that in the first place? Did I even want to do real estate in the first place? So you start asking yourself these questions and just looking to work in maybe something more soulful, where closer to your heart, that drives you a bit more. But it's always this conundrum between interest and maybe what can generate more income, what seems more stable, or what has better status, or because when I wanted to start a new agency in the female-led business, in the female-led industries, I also received a lot of backlash from real estate people, not surprisingly from men, but just wanting to change on doing something that was more interested in. So what would you say to people who are thinking about maybe pivoting, or who are like you or like me, navigating these thoughts of, oh, but I should be doing this, I should be a serious real estate person and work on my business strategy, versus, oh, but I'm really drawn and more interested maybe in towards this. How do you find the sweet spot?
So I think that based on the person asking the question, the answer in my mind would be different. So, for example, I have a lot of very well educated, had great career moms in my neighborhood. Now their kids are in college. They might have taken off almost a decade to raise their children, but they're still like well-educated, well-read, very like they were president of the PTA, so they have those credentials and now they're trying to kind of go back into something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for those people, I'll often say, let's talk about what you love to do, because it's hard to go back in and kind of follow a very specific path. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's kind of like, for me, I feel like when I do what I love to do, good things just happen. Whereas when I work with students, I'll often tell them, you know what, if you can get yourself into a big company for a couple of years and learn the process of doing certain things, I think that that's almost like the last piece of your education. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, I feel like I look at like how much runway somebody has in their career. And if you're just starting out, I think being around like a very well organized business that it runs well, you're kind of getting good fundamental foundational ideas. Whereas I feel like if you're later in life and you're going back into a career, or maybe you've been in a career for all these years and now you're ready to kind of switch it up, I think there is something to finding what you love and following that. There's a book that I love called Ikigai. I don't know if you've ever read
Mm-hmm.
it, and of course you have. And it's, like they talk about that, like what is the intersection between what you love to do and what you're really good at. And I think that once you're beyond kind of entry level, that is a great exercise to go through, and it really helps you to find kind of where you feel like you're going to thrive. It's not about the next person and looking to the left and looking to the right. It's about, who am I?
Mm-hmm. And so, do you work a lot with women who are in this situation and took some year gaps, or wanted to take a break from the career for whatever reason? Are you working with a lot of these profiles right now?
So I have a lot of women that that are kind of in my network that
Mm-hmm.
fall in that category. I find that when somebody's coming to me and they're hiring me to do an executive search,
Mm-hmm.
they want something very specific. So once in a while, I'll say, you know what? Meet this one person. She's amazing. She's done this and that. She's been out of the industry for a while. But unfortunately, what I find is that when they're coming to me and paying me a fee, that's not the profile that they want.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes, what will happen is they'll say, "But you know what? I might be willing to give this person a chance to do some part-time stuff," and that's how the women can kind of get slowly back into
Mm-hmm.
a career. I think you met one of my closest friends, and she's my childhood friend. She worked in
Mm-hmm.
marketing for years and years, and then she took some time off to raise her kids. And when she came back to it, it was like, okay, well, now she's a 50-year-old marketing expert who hasn't really worked in 10 years when the whole industry has changed. And she came to me and she said, well, let me run your social media. And it's been amazing to me because I think that she does certain things for me in a way that might be different from
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the industry, because she's not following what's right. She's following what she thinks would be good for her and I. And I find that there's something to that as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
that trusting of your gut and saying, you know what, I've had all these years of experience and now I'm going to learn what's happening online and I'm going to make that my own. I think there's a lot of value there. And I highly encourage people to look to bring on some of those people, whether they're on the board or, even if it's like part-time help or what have you, because I think there's a lot of interesting ideas
Mm-hmm.
that women have that they could bring to the table.
Absolutely, I'm completely with you. And Lisa, so you have a podcast and you're meeting a lot of CEOs and real estate CEOs. What's the most common struggle that you're hearing that keeps them up at night, and but that they won't necessarily admit publicly?
I think most of the CEOs that I talk with, the thing that keeps them up at night the most is the future, is technology, is AI, and I'm not saying that it's what's going to happen tomorrow, but I think that there's this feeling of like, okay, I've worked for 30 years. I understand the industry. I understand what it takes, the rules of the game, what it takes to be successful. And now all of a sudden, wait, are the rules different? And there's this fear of quite frankly the unknown. So I've worked with a lot of large and medium-sized real estate companies to put together AI teams. And what's interesting is I feel like a lot of these folks they don't want to be the first to market. They want, they don't want to kind of break the story because it's just too expensive to do that. And the Googles and the Metas and the big organizations that have these, billions of dollars of marketing budgets are going to be able to do that. If you're a mid or large real estate firm, you probably don't have the money to hire these folks who are like building algorithms and getting paid multi-millions of dollars a year to build out the AI strategies. But I think everybody who is in the business world now who's a leader realizes, just like when the internet came on, and there's going to be a change. And what is that change? And it's probably not as great as you think it's going to be, but everybody wants to be able to kind of be on the right path to it. So it's, how do I adapt technology? How do I bring in the right people to help me to create the strategies, but not go too far as to think I'm going to be like the leader in this entire industry.
I love this topic, and that leads me to my next question. Because the executive search industry has a reputation for being relationship driven and traditional. So, how are you using technology and data to evolve the business model while maintaining that personal touch?
So, I guess when I say that's what keeps most CEOs up at night, it's also what keeps me up at night. So I feel like I spend a lot of time thinking about, on one hand, I a social media strategy, being out there, being on the news, talking about the jobs market, whatever it might be, coming here, talking to you. I think those things are really important. But I also want to make sure that I'm balancing that with the tried and true, like, this is how you build a business plan, and this is how you build a successful business, and this is how you build a team. And I find that some of it is like trusting your gut and saying, you know what, I've been a professional for so many years that even though, my kids might call me and say, oh, mom, you put that up, it's so cringy, don't take that down, take that down. To say, you know what, I'm going to go a little bit out of my comfort zone. And that's something I think that's going to make me, me, and that's okay. And, my partner, Chris, and I, we started this business. It's not really a for-profit business, but it's, a passion project where we work with college students to help them to figure out how to build a career in real estate. And it's been something where we do a lot of work with Georgetown University and a handful of others, and I'm on the board at Fordham. And I've spent a lot of time sitting with students, talking to students, figuring out who would be right for real estate. Why would they be right for real estate? And it brings me so much joy. And I feel like when I see a student then able to take that and like build a career around it, it's like, to me, that is the essence of leadership, the ability to take someone and really say, you know what, I understand there might be a playbook where like you have this career, you go to Microsoft for 20 years, you do this, you do this, you do this. But you know what? Let's talk about you and you holistically, and how do we create a career path for you? And I feel like people also, like, when you bring their whole authentic self to the career, it just changes who they are and what they do and what they're capable of.
Absolutely. And Lisa, you've known for creative team building that focuses on personal discovery. And in a world of spreadsheets and transactions, real estate, why do you think that the human element is so critical to being successful in real estate?
It's so important. And so it's the title of a book, and I don't know if I love the book, but I love the title. It's What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And what I find is, for students or young folks entering the workforce, that what will get you to be a great vice president is not what will get you to be a senior leader. And I often find that I spend a lot of time, especially with women who are VP, SVP, MD, they want to get into the C suite. And they've always been the people who have done all the work, right? They are the ones who are there the earliest, stay the latest. Their spreadsheets are perfect, their data is perfect, but they haven't stepped foot on a golf course in maybe in their entire career. And being able to pivot from, okay, I'm great at what I do. I've built this foundation. I can do all of the work. What got me here to this VP level is not what's going to get me to my next level. And what I need to now do is, like I take a lot of women out. I do a weekly golf lesson, and I'll take women entrepreneurs and women leaders, and I'll bring them with me on a Friday afternoon. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to introduce you to the golf course. Like, come out, walk around. Like, it's not
this.
so, yeah, it's amazing. Like, it's not so intimidating. By the way, I have an instructor who also teaches 10-year-olds. So like, she gives you a hug when it goes in the hole. Like, it's wonderful. But I feel like women feeling confident that it's not just about the spreadsheets. It's not just about getting the answer right. That is the foundation. You need that. If you don't get that, you're not getting anything. But to now take it to the next level and say, you know what? I'm going to get into some of these women's organizations. I'm involved with WX and WLI and Crew and a lot of these organizations. And I see that the women who have found it's not just financial success, but happiness are able to step off the treadmill a little bit and build their own path and build that around who they are. And I think that's the scariest thing because your company is not telling you to do that. So, like if somebody goes to work for a big company, they're going to say, okay, and the next step is learn this, and the next step is learn this, and the next step is learn this. But they're not really going to tell you, okay, the next step is you should really do a lot of networking. You should really get on the golf course or the tennis or pickleball or meet people in a different way, not just sitting behind the computer type it makes such a huge difference. And especially in the women leaders that I spend my time with, I feel like one of the things they all have in common is a group of women that build them up, is a network of women that they meet with monthly, quarterly, where they say, you know what, is it a crazy idea for me to start this scholarship program because I think it would be amazing, and for other women who support them, and men, there are a lot of men who are supporters as well, who will say, you know what, it's not crazy. You should do that. And then go speak at Georgetown and explain to the students why you're doing that and kind of bring it all together. I think the one thing that I would say about the human element versus the spreadsheets is if you've built a career, you're 20, 25 years in, trust yourself a little bit and bring a little bit of yourself in, because that's how you build your teams. That's how people want to be beside you, because you're not just doing what everybody else does and kind of the next step, the next step, the next step. You're really making it exciting.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's why I sit on a lot of boards and why I'm involved with a lot of charities, because I think that when I go and I sit at an event where like all the biotech, I don't have anything to do with biotech, but I'll go in and I'll sit with biotech leaders and listen to a conference around like how they're building certain things. And I feel like that will spark something in me that will help my real estate clients, because traditionally, quite frankly, the real estate folks are often kind of behind the big finance and tech companies, and that's where they want to be. So they're not breaking the stories. They're following the trends. But I find that like being in the forefront of like what are some of these companies doing can allow me to like add a little bit of that to some of my clients.
And so for women who are looking to do that work and want to sit on boards, how do you sit on boards? Is it are the boards reaching out to you and say, hey, Lisa, come on over. This is my assistant.
I love your assistant.
So do you reach out proactively and you reach out to boards and you ask them, I want to join in, or are they inviting you? How does that work?
So it's a combination. what I encourage women or anybody to do is to find your first board that is something that you are passionate about, and don't expect to get paid, and hope that you don't have to make a big donation to get there, right? So, for example, my son has type 1 diabetes. For me, that was always something that just I was passionate about. Like, how do you have a child that has a chronic illness, but is also not defined by that? And I spent a lot of time working with the Naomi Berry Diabetes Center up at the Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital, and working with the doctors and going to a lot of because the research was personally fascinating to me. So I would go and I would sit in with all these researchers, and they would talk to me about how, like, they edited the genome and they turned a pig purple. And I'm like, I don't even think I'm smart enough to repeat those words, let alone understand what you're doing. But I feel like learning about something that you're passionate about widens your horizons. It opens your mind to certain things. And I think that by having that passion, you will want to dedicate your time. And I think those are probably the good first boards to be on, where you can like give of yourself, your time, your passion, and maybe run a fundraiser or help do something. But over time, you then get networked with people who are on a lot of boards. And now I find it's interesting that, like, there are so many more boards that are coming to me and asking me to be on them than I could even possibly be a part of. And I love that. But you have to kind of start it off by stepping in, and that might be in your community, right? Like, I have a lot of friends locally who are on the historical board or the community preservation boards, or so, especially if you have a real estate mind, if you want to be involved, I think that figuring out what's adjacent to it and how do you get networked in there is very helpful.
I love that. This is a great insight for people who are thinking about joining boards. That's very helpful. And Lisa, who are the leaders, either in the real estate space or in life in general, that you're looking up to, and why?
That's an interesting question. And you know what? I asked the same question on my podcast, and I've never really thought through the answer myself. We do. None of us do this alone, right? We all have mentors and leaders. And I think that there are a few people that I really admire. And what I find is the people who I often admire are people who are do run their careers in their own way. So, for example, one of my best friends, her name is Andrea Miller. She's worked for big companies. She's run a leadership and development and training platform at JP Morgan. And she went off a handful of years ago and started her own business. And she does a lot of career coaching. She does a lot of like helping people to think through building their businesses, building their teams. And I always admire the way she thinks. And so I find that I call her all the time. I'm like, what would you do if you were in this situation? Or what do you think about that? Because I find that her organized, detailed approach is so valuable to me, because often my approach is a little bit more chaotic and a little bit more, how does this feel? I also feel like my husband has been like my greatest cheerleader and my greatest mentor. And even now, it's funny because he's successful in his own, he runs a hospitality company, and we were at this hospitality conference, and I introduced him to some folks that I know, and they were talking to him, and he said something, and they're like, oh, wait, you run this company and you own this company? He's like, yeah. And they're like, oh, so you're kind of a big deal. He's like, yeah, but this is Lisa's time. And I feel like having somebody who supports you and just thinks like whatever you do is phenomenal. Like, it helps, especially for a woman. I feel like finding a partner that can help you to build you up is so important. And by the way, whenever I work with the young students, I'm like, when you think about who you're going to spend your life with, that better be somebody who supports you, because if they don't lift you up, you're never going to be your best you.
Absolutely. I think it can really not make or break your career, but it can make such a difference if your best friend, your partner is your ally and is supportive and really believes in you, but believes in you in a way that's because because there is, there will be the men who are like, yeah, in principle, I believe in you, but when like big life decisions are coming up, then you realize, for instance, not so much. For instance, I was dating a boyfriend, and we were talking about children, not children, and he basically told me, oh, but if you have children, you will have to stop working. I was like, and I thought he was my best supporter. So I think really finding somebody who believes in you, in your vision, respect the grind as well.
Hello. What's your kitty cat's name?
This is Samantha, and Samantha is a boy.
Oh, his name. Okay. He's so
Yeah,
cute.
yeah, his name. Yeah, I think that can really change everything and how you're approaching the business, the moves that you're making in your career, your self belief, so important. I think choosing the right love partner can affect so many other areas of your life. So I'm completely with you on that being a great piece of advice for students, or saying like, who are you spending the most time with? What are they telling you? Like, are they supportive in those moments? And finding a fan, a cheerleader.
You need a cheerleader. You definitely
Yeah.
need a cheerleader. And, y- you know, when somebody else believes in you that you respect, it rubs off on you.
Hmm.
You know, when I have my husband of 25 years who is successful saying she's a rock star,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, maybe I am. You know, like
Yeah.
it makes you, it gives you kind of it helps to lift you up. And I think that, you know, friends, you look at your closest friends. I think it's important that you have people that support you. To me, my number one gauge, I've recently during COVID, I did like a friends cleanse, and I was like, okay, the only friends I'm keeping are the friends who, when I call them, it's not that I could call them with bad news, but I could call them with good news. And I can call them and tell them, I just did this. And they are like
So
so
happy.
happy for me as if it happened to themselves.
Hmm.
Because that's the kind of friend that I am. And I feel like you just need that. And I'll tell you, you know, one other thing, like my partner, Chris Papa, and I run this business and in the real estate world. And when I when I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do for my last career stop, I spent a lot of time with Chris talking to him. And it was interesting because Jackson Lucas was kind of a startup. You know, it's a startup backed by a company that's been around for 50 years, but it was a startup. And I kept saying, you know, should I go to like one of the big Shrek firms? I have the opportunity, I have some offers, I can do certain things. But at the end of the day, I thought, you know what? There's a business that has this, and I'm going to be able to overlay all of kind of the way I want to do it and take a shot. Whereas if I were to join one of these very well established companies, I feel like the business has this, and they're like, yeah, just come in and, you know, follow the rules.
Hmm.
And I think it's been really wonderful to not only follow some of the rules, but also create some rules.
Hmm. I love that. And Lisa, if you had to give your your Lisa student self a piece of advice, a piece of wisdom, what would you tell her?
I would tell her, trust your gut, because I find that I make my biggest mistakes when I look around and I think, I'm behind. Everybody around me has done something successful, and you know, this company is doing that, and this company is doing that, and I should be. You know, my husband laughs at me because I think I'm like competing with Google. You know, like I'm like Google did that, I should do that. You know, but but at the end of the day, I do find that when I do what I believe in, when I say, you know what, I might have the opportunity to hire this Ivy League student, or I might have the opportunity to hire this student who's graduating from Baruch, but they are like so gritty and so hardworking that I should follow my gut on the people. And it's not always about the credentials, the degree. And I think that it, it's, I would tell my 20-year old self, you keep working hard, do what you have to do. But at the end of the day, when something inside of you tells you you could do it a little bit differently, don't always think that the 85-year-old man that you work for has the right answer.
I love that. This is a great piece of advice. Lisa, it was so much fun having you on the podcast today. It was such a pleasure diving into your story and listening about all your insights. I'm sure it will be very helpful for our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here. And I hope I get to hang with you in Samantha again.
Absolutely. And Lisa, what's coming up for Jackson Lucas? I always have problems saying the name of that company. And for you, and where can people find you?
So people can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place, which is it's just Lisa Flicker. Also Jackson Lucas, which is a full retained search firm. I talked to you about my piece of it, which is the real estate practice, but we do work for hedge funds and private equity firms and investment banking. And I have a lot of wonderful partners. So if you want to kind of just find my full career, you can look on the Jackson Lucas website and listen to my podcast, Apple, Spotify. It's called Beyond the Resume. And probably if you message me through LinkedIn, I'll get back to you, because even though I don't have the time to do it, somehow I stay up all night long and just respond to people because I love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lila. It was such a pleasure.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
And that wraps up today's episode on Parlez-vous CEO and our special real estate series with female-led leaders in real estate. I'm Anne-Lise Cailliez, and I can't wait to join you again next week. Thanks for listening to Parlez-vous CEO today. If you enjoyed the show, leave a 5-star review. It helps us keep going. And connect with us on Instagram at Parlez-vous CEO. I am Anne-Lise Cailliez, and I know some days are harder than others. On those tough days, think back to why you started. What you're doing today matters, even when you can't see the results yet. Ideas are great, but it's what you do with them that counts. Find everything we talked about today at parlezvousceo.com. See you next week, and you've got this.